Here we go, session 6. We just talked about persecution. One of those realities of yes, when we seek to make much of Jesus, we're going to face difficult days. In this world we'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer. Christ has overcome the world. 2 Timothy 3:12, all those who desire to be godly will face persecution. But what we do know is this, and we learn that from Acts chapter 7. When Stephen, there in that moment in his final breath, what he sees, Jesus standing at the right hand of the throne of God, affirming and applauding the very sacrifice that he would make. You do not stand alone. So when you stand for Christ, you begin to embrace the reality that we share in the suffering of Jesus and we're not alone. And now in this session, we talk about what does it mean to have a prepared heart? That is the understanding that the Acts 1:8 strategy, you shall be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Up to this point, the good news of the gospel within the heart of the early church has remained in Jerusalem. But now it begins to break loose. There's traction beginning to happen. It's now revealing itself in supernatural ways, in supernatural proportions in Samaria. So when we think about Samaria, you got John chapter 4, where Jesus gives us the understanding that there was a deep hatred between the nation of Israel towards the Samaritans. But he would say, I must go through Samaria. So it's there in John 4, we realize this racial barrier, this racial divide. But now you got Philip, who's our main character in Acts chapter 8. And Acts chapter 6, verse 3, talks about how he's full of wisdom and full of the Holy Spirit. See, he had the same measurement of the Holy Spirit within him that you and I have within us. So it's not like these early disciples were like bionic believers, like they walked in the fullness of the Holy Spirit. They had all that they needed for life and godliness, and so do we. So when the Spirit begins to help us be mobilized for the sake of the gospel, we have to respond in obedience. Now, we've talked about this. It's not about ability, it's about availability. And the true mark of being a Christ follower is saying yes to the commands when he speaks into our soul. So delayed obedience, disobedience. But that's not what we see in the heart and legacy of Philip. See, in Acts chapter 1, the church begins to be dispersed. The gospel begins to go into what we would know as Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. And revival begins to be unleashed. People are coming to know Christ by the hundreds. Literally, we begin to see this movement take on exponential numbers. But the Spirit of God speaks to Philip and gives a very directive statement. Go to a desert road. Now weigh that out. Revival, breaking loose, running rampant, and you want me to leave this and go to a desert road. In the midst of that, in the level of obedience in the heart of Philip, you have what's known as the Ethiopian eunuch, the other character in our Acts 8 strategy. What we find out is that he's on his way to Jerusalem to worship. Now, he's not a Christ follower, which reveals to us, Ecclesiastes 3:11, that God has placed eternity in our heart. So he's seeking and searching for something to satisfy his soul. He's over the treasury of Candace, who's the queen of Ethiopia, which means he doesn't travel alone. He goes to Jerusalem. He's denied entrance into the temple. And in the marketplace, he gets a scroll of Isaiah. And on his way home, which by the way, 500 miles, which means that he was longing for something to satisfy his soul and was willing to go to the furthest lengths to get that. But religion left him empty. And on his way back, there's this divine collision with a man that's obedient to the Spirit of God to go to a road where there's no traffic. It's possibly high noon. And not only that, incredibly dangerous to be traveling in that situation unprotected. And as he says yes, two worlds are about to collide and one world's about to be forever changed. So as we think about what does it mean to have a prepared heart, full of wisdom, full of the Spirit, the same Holy Spirit that lived and occupied the heart of Philip is the same Holy Spirit that occupies us. It's just a matter of, will we be obedient? I'll never forget this moment. I was on my way home from a speaking engagement and I stopped at a fast food restaurant to get something to eat and get something to drink. I took my cup and I went to the fountain machine and I was waiting for my order to be processed. And in the midst of that, I was just standing there. I was so parched. I literally put my cup to the fountain machine, filled it, and drank it right there in the moment. And continued that process for what felt like maybe 3 to 4 minutes as I was waiting for my order. I noticed out of the corner of my eye, 4 guys all dressed in black. And I know black on black is a fashion. Thank you, Johnny Cash. But the indicators on their t-shirts that revealed to me that they were not followers of Jesus were 666 logos, pentagrams, and goat heads. And I remember being completely creeped out by the fact of, there's these guys, ultimate Satan worshipers. But here's what was interesting. The Spirit of God within me, standing at the fountain machine, compelled me to go share the message of Jesus with them. Have you ever had a conversation that went like this to the Lord? No. But my problem, I didn't say it within my spirit. I said it out loud, not just once, but twice. Check this out. So here I was, cup, mouth, refilling, drinking, and here's what happened. No. I said it out loud, not just once, twice, but then the thought began to percolate in my soul. If God's calling me to go tell them about Him, then revival is going to happen in Backyard Burger. I remember as I was walking towards them, the closer I got completely creeped out. Matter of fact, I forgot to introduce myself walking up to the table, which meant I went right into default mode. I literally walked up to a table of a group of guys I'd never met before in my life, Satan worshipers, thus the t-shirts that they were wearing, and I quoted John 3:16. So it went like this. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And then I introduced myself. I went, hey, what's up? My name's Ed. In that moment, I remember one guy specifically going, hey, we want nothing to do with you. And I was like, no, you don't understand. At the fountain machine, the Spirit of God told me to come over here and tell you about Him. And this is the statement He made. He said, hey, dude, we saw you talking at the fountain machine. We want nothing to do with you. So here I was, creeped out by them. They're creeped out by me. And what I realized in that moment, that conversation was coming to an end. I remember going to get my order, sitting down in my vehicle, and I just had an out loud conversation with the God of this universe. God, why? Why would you send me over to this table to be embarrassed, ridiculed, and mocked? And all of a sudden, surface in my heart, John 14:15. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. What we see in this session, to have a prepared heart, is exactly what Philip did. As I was called to go to a table where I was so intimidated, but yet delayed obedience, disobedience, but in that moment seeking to please God through my obedience, Philip goes to a desert road, not knowing what's about to happen, but his life was divinely about to intersect someone else's life, and that would allow the gospel to get to the ends of the earth.